For most people, fairy tales are our first introduction to literature, and sometimes even the first time we get a glimpse of a world outside of our own. On the surface, fairy tales may seem to be well-meaning children's stories of magical far-off places, royalty, and beauty, but the works of researchers such as Bettelheim and Zipes show just how much of an influence fairy tales can have on a child's development, leading us to question what the morals of these stories are subconsciously communicating to children, and how they may influence their perspectives and behaviours later in life. Fairy tales are seen widely as innocent bedtime stories, but some fairy tales communicate problematic and oppressive morals, which have the potential to influence society's collective unconscious in a negative way. One of these fairy tales is the story of Bluebeard. To explore the origins of Bluebeard, we must venture back in time to 17th century France. Like many fairy tales, Bluebeard evolved as an oral folktale before being published for the first time in 1697 by Charles Perrault, or, as he's often called, the father of the fairy tale. Bluebeard is infamous for his cruelty and ugly appearance, so he relies on his wealth to lure women into marriage. After his most recent wife has vanished under mysterious circumstances, Bluebeard turns his interest to the youngest daughter of a farming family. She's hesitant to marry him at first, but eventually his wealth and status wins her over. Bluebeard then whisks her away to his castle, where she's showered in an abundance of jewels and riches. Soon after they marry, Bluebeard says he must leave for business and entrusts his new wife with a set of keys, giving her access to every room in the castle except one that she's forbidden to enter. Despite his warning, she gives in to her curiosity and enters the room where she finds the bodies of Bluebeard's previous wives mounted on the walls. In her fright, she drops the key to the ground, letting it fall in a pool of blood. She runs from the room and desperately tries to get the bloodstain off the key, but every time she wipes it away, it comes straight back. Bluebeard then comes home early, and upon seeing the bloodstained key, knows his wife has disobeyed him, and decides that she should share the fate of his previous wives. Thankfully she escapes, only narrowly avoiding her demise. Some fairy tales can have harmless morals, sometimes even beneficial ones, but the moral of Bluebeard is highly problematic and oppressive. Perrault's moral serves as a warning to women, not of murderous husbands, but of themselves and their own curiosity. He writes, "Curiosity, in spite of its appeal, may often cost a horrendous deal. 1,000 new cases arise each day. With due respect, O ladies, the thrill is slight. As soon as you quench it, it goes away. In truth, the price one pays is never right." This moral is solidified by the symbolism of an irremovable bloodstain, which is often seen throughout literature to represent a guilty conscience and a lack of innocence, seen most notably in Shakespeare's Macbeth. Perrault uses this symbolism to communicate that by disobeying her husband and being seduced by curiosity, Bluebeard's wife has tainted her innocence and must now bear the burden of guilt. This penalization of female curiosity has been the subject of stories and legends for centuries. It's seen especially in Christian legends, such as the tale of Eve, who, like Bluebeard's wife, gives in to temptation and launches humanity into a world of sin. In 17th century France, the curiosity of boys and young men was undeniably encouraged, leading to incredible advances in technology, such as the first successful blood transfusion in 1667. In contrast, the suppression and discouragement of female curiosity kept women in a place of submission. You were either an obedient wife, taking care of the children, cooking meals, and serving your husband, or you were a prostitute, looked down on by society as a purely sexual being. If female curiosity hadn't been discouraged in Perrault's time, women would have had the same rights to knowledge as men, giving them the same intellectual power, a concept that has intimidated men for centuries and continues to do so. The portrayal of female curiosity in Christianity has acted as a catalyst to enforce and sustain female oppression, and, being the prominent religion in 17th century France, has heavily influenced Perrault's writing. The story displays distinctive Christian values, placing importance on marriage and obedience, almost retelling the story of Eve in a way where Bluebeard acts as the devil and the forbidden room is the enticing apple that leads to Eve's downfall. Suppression of female curiosity stems from a place of fear that if given the same opportunity and resources, women may hold the same social and economic power as men. This attitude towards women's curiosity has been the driving force of our patriarchal society for centuries, fueling the most prominent aspects of women's oppression. It encourages women not to question sexist ideologies spoon-fed to them by a male-driven society. The morals of Bluebeard and the tale of Eve reinforce the message that women should be passive and obedient, and that the desire for knowledge is an unattractive quality. But it's not only intellectual empowerment this attitude discourages. Stories such as Bluebeard and the tale of Eve may try to hide their latent sexual content, but there is an underlying meaning that discourages sexual empowerment by teaching women to stay passive and not to give in to seduction or sexual curiosity, further reinforcing the Christian values of innocence and virginity. These values have worked to suppress women's sense of sexual empowerment, condemning sexual promiscuity and exploration, while the same actions are permitted if performed by men. These double standards teach women that men's sexual desires are more prominent than theirs, putting women in the very dangerous position of sexual submission, leading to all kinds of sexual violence and abuse. Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber is a modernization of Bluebeard, published in 1979, amidst the strong presence of second-wave feminism, a movement renowned for encouraging women's sexual empowerment. Carter, along with many other female writers of the feminist movement, focused largely on drawing the latent sexual meanings from texts narrated by sexist ideologies. As shown through the works of Bettelheim, fairy tales have a profound impact on the collective unconscious of the social world, making them prime targets for feminist retellings. The Bloody Chamber is set in 20th century France, an era known for its decadence and corruption. Carter preserves the plot of the original story, but completely transforms the tone to highlight the problematic portrayal of women's sexuality, by drawing out the latent sexual content. In Carter's retelling, the heroine, a lower-class 17-year-old piano player, recalls the anticipation of her marriage to the wealthy and powerful Marquise. The heroine's narration gives the sense that she sees her younger self as a completely different person, implying that she has been changed through the events that occurred in the story. This distant narrative helps Carter to combat the original moral by framing the story as a tale of sexual awakening, rather than that of womanly foolishness. This shows that the knowledge the heroine has gained through curiosity and sexual exploration have helped her come to better understand herself, her desires, and her aspirations. The Bloody Chamber highlights the fundamental issues regarding the portrayal of women's sexuality in literature and in wider society, focusing on the link between sex and violence and the attraction to female innocence and purity. Even the title of the story immediately links its meaning to female sexuality, using the bloody chamber as a metaphor for a woman's womb and her obstruction from exploring it as a representation of society's suppression of female sexuality. The characterization of the heroine as a young, feminine, and virginal woman helps Carter to showcase the flaws within the attraction to innocence that is communicated throughout society, predominantly through Christian values. Carter uses disturbingly descriptive language, such as, "He twined my hair into a rope so that he could better kiss the downy furrows below my ears." These seductive descriptions almost romanticize the sexual exploitation and victimization of the heroine. Carter does this not to fool the reader into ignoring the dangers posed by the Marquise, but to heighten the reader's awareness of the sadomasochistic underpinnings of society's sexualization of female innocence. Carter even goes so far as to have the Marquise refer to the heroine as his little nun, after she has found his collection of sadistic pornography, which he refers to as the prayer books. Only after he has seen the shock of innocence on her face does he feel the urge to take her virginity. The heroine later reflects on this, saying, "To think he might have chosen me, because, in my innocence, he sensed a rare talent for corruption." By making the link between sexual exploitation and Christianity, Carter highlights how the suppression of female sexuality leads to the fetishization of innocence, which is a very common factor towards acts of pedophilia and sexual assault.